Hello everyone. Today I will be featuring the Kronstadt, the upcoming Tier 9 premium cruiser, and very similar to the Stalingrad, but with its fair share of own features. Now, it's easily the largest Tier 9 cruiser, but unlike the Stalingrad, it doesn't really suffer all these massive drawbacks that ship does. The concealment is actually quite good. It has 12.4 kilometers with the full stealth build, meaning concealment expert, camo, and module. So not quite as good as the other tier 9 cruisers, but not really that bad. I mean, it's not bad enough to be a significant liability. Combined with the fact that the radar is the standard Soviet tier 9 radar, 11.7 kilometers, it's actually quite a significant radar threat. And as you can see here, I pretty much managed to sneak almost undetected all the way up to the cap and spot the Benson. So it's very much a viable cap contester and a considerable threat. The health pool does reflect its massive size. Pretty insane 71k health, far outmatching all its tier 9 competition. I think the closest one is the Rune, which has like 49.5k health. That's the closest competition, and that's like over 20k less health than it has, which is a massive advantage compared to the rest of the field. The torpedo belt is also very impressive, 34% damage reduction, and I mean that's even beating some tier 9 battleships in torpedo protection. The Missouri has like 27, I think, so having a 34% torpedo belt on a cruiser is obviously really impressive. The armor though can't really compete with the Stalingrad. It has 25mm plating on the bow, the stern, the deck, the upper belt. So it's pretty much susceptible to all battleship AP, since I think 380mm guns and above can overmatch it, which means Alsace, Bismarck, Tirpitz, all of these ships can easily overmatch this armor. But then again, this is not something unique to the Kronstadt. I mean, the Donskoy has 25mm armor. The Ibuki has it pretty much everywhere except I think the middle deck. And in comparison to these guys, the Kronstadt actually has an amazing armor belt. It extends far past the front turret and far behind the back turret, and it sits at 230mm of armor. And it has another layer of 90mm of armor protecting the citadel behind it. The citadel is pretty large. It's a long citadel, but it barely peaks over the waterline, so I think it's lower than pretty much all its competition. It's large because the ship is large, but it's very low in the water. And if you don't understand how impressive 230mm of belt armor is, ships like the Rune, Ibuki, Donskoy, these have 100mm of belt armor. 100. This thing has 230, so it gives you an idea of just how good that belt is when angled. Overmatch, by the way, on Neptune. That's of course another advantage this ship has. We'll get to the guns in a bit. The AA values are actually probably one of the significant downsides of this ship. I think it has probably the worst AA among tier 9 cruisers, and probably by a significant margin. It does have access to defensive AA though, so dropping it as a carrier is still not going to be an easy task. The handling is another downside. The speed is decently fast, 33.5 knots, but the turning circle is 840 meters and the rudder shift is 11.9. It's not quite the horridness that is Stalingrad with its 1.1 km turning circle, but it's still a downside, especially the rudder shift time. Pretty sure both the values make it pretty much the worst among the other T9 cruisers. And then of course we have the guns that we have been seeing in action here a bit, and they are of course 9 305mm guns, just like the Stalingrad. The firing angles are very good. If you look at the firing angles right now, I can shoot all my guns, and look how angled my ship is. So the firing angles are absolutely excellent on the ship. And the range is 18.2, which combined with the 12.4 km concealment means that I quite confidently went with the reload mod instead of the range mod. Both are probably perfectly fine options, but I prefer having that additional firepower, especially with the radar, since that means some additional damage you can deal during the radar. that actually leaves the reload at 16.3 seconds, and the turret traverse is 35 seconds with expert marksman. Once again, better than Stalingrad's in that sense. The shells don't quite match up to the Stalingrad's velocity though. It's 900 meters per second for the AP and 920 meters per second for the HE. Those are of course still excellent values. I mean, they're slow compared to the Stalingrad, but they're by no means slow shells. And also of course the access to HE means that the Kronstadt is quite versatile. The HE shells have a 24% fire chance, and that means it can deal with angled targets significantly better than the Stalingrad. The fact that the guns are also 305mm means that if we calculate the Russian HE pen, which is 1/6, these guns actually, the HE actually penetrates 50mm of armor, which means the HE is pretty much universally consistent against pretty much all the targets you can possibly face, unless you're shooting belt armor. But other than that, you're pretty much guaranteed to deal damage with the HE. The AP is of course also brutally strong, especially if you're up-tiered. So it overmatches 21mm of armor, which means if you do get matchmaking that puts you up against tier 7s and stuff, you're basically a battleship against them because you overmatch their armor. So that's I've had it happen in a few games, and it's really, really stupid. You can just charge nose in against multiple cruisers and kill them all, and they can't really do anything about it. Ultimately though, I think the ship is too powerful. The gap between Citadel on the Isla, 18k. Once again, these guns easily Citadel pretty much all battleships at pretty much all ranges. I have consistently been able to do it against Montanas and Republic and pretty much across the board. Very, very strong guns. Anyway, I do feel this ship is too powerful because the gap between it and the rest of the tier 9 competition is just massive. I feel you could easily put the Kronstadt in tier 10 and it would do very well. At tier 9, it's just out of place. Completely out of place. I mean, even removing everything else, just a health pool on this ship is so absurd. I mean, let's consider the fact that heals scale based on max health. So let's compare it to the Rune. The Rune has the highest HP of a tier 9 cruiser at 49.5. One heal on the Rune heals for 8,360 in health. That's with the health flag. With 4 heals, that's 33k health. So the effective health of the Rune, if we combine all its health pool and all these heals, the effective health pool is like 83k health. Then we take the Kronstadt. Every single heal heals it for 12k. With 4 heals, you have 47.7k effective health. Almost 48k effective health. That's on top of the already present 71k. So that means this ship has an effective health of 120k. And considering it also has radar, unlike the Rune, means it has huge map control. Because, I mean, if you want to cap an objective, you kind of first have to deal with the radar ship in order to cap that objective. And on this ship you have to deal with 120k of effective health. And I mean, the Rune has 83. That's almost 50% more, and these are the same tier ships. It's huge. Sure, the 25mm overmatch is annoying, but once again, it's not the only cruiser that suffers with it. In fact, it probably deals with it the best out of all the other tier 9 cruisers because it has so much health. If you play an Ibuki and you get overmatched through that 25mm armor and you eat the 15 or 20k volley, you're down to half health. If you eat a 20k volley in the Ibuki, you're down to half health and you are really struggling. If you eat a 20k volley in the Kronstadt, well, you're down to 50k health. If you eat a 20k volley in the Kronstadt, you still have the most health out of all tier 9 cruisers. That's how, like, massive this health pool is. And the whole thing with 25mm armor, note that I'm using that stupid belt that I mentioned. I'm baiting him into shooting my belt, which is why I'm bouncing a lot of these shells. And that's like the whole purpose of this, that 203mm belt is so damn strong. And I mean, if you end up against tier 10 matchmaking, it doesn't matter if you have 25mm or 27mm armor, because all the battleships at tier 10 overmatch all of it anyway. So it doesn't really have any impact. But in return, you have 71k health, whereas the guys, the other guys with the 27mm armor, most likely have 20 or sometimes even 30k less health than you do. So in terms of strength, this ship is just, it's too much. I think it's too much at tier 9. Once again, he's angled, so I switched to HE, and even though the reload is quite long, we're still talking about 24% fire chance per shell. So if your battleship just tries to sit angle in, you can burn it down quite well. Of course, the HE pen, thanks to the big caliber, is excellent as mentioned. 50mm of pen, I think what Grosse Kurfürst deck armor is 50. American battleship deck armor is like 38, 40. So you can pretty much across the board, it doesn't matter what battleship is trying to angle against you, you can burn them all down and just deal massive damage to them. Giving some broadside, the game is actually about to end. Let's see if I can get some more additional damage in. Overall though, the ship has many of the strengths of the Stalingrad, but significantly more versatility. The Stalingrad suffers because it doesn't deal with angled targets well at all, because it doesn't have any HE, and it has atrocious concealment at 14.4. The Kronstadt though, 12.4 concealment and access to HE. Sure, you trade some armor for it, but it's a pretty damn good trade. And it's a trade you would probably make any day of the week in order to get access to this. In terms of competition at tier 9, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is the strongest tier 9 cruiser. By a wide margin. Sure, it doesn't have torps, but I mean, you can easily play around that. You can easily play around the fact that you don't have torps. There's many ships that don't have torps, and in general, when you have these guns and you have this health pool, you don't necessarily even need those torps. Will my shells land? The game is about to end. I'm about to get broadside, which means I can finally deal some good AP damage. Maybe I should have stuck to HE and dealt some additional damage to him. I don't think I'll get another volley off, and this game does end. And 193k damage, which honestly in this ship it isn't even that much. I consistently, I would say I've been averaging about 130k damage in this cruiser, which is really, really high for a tier 9 cruiser, because tier 9 cruisers in general kind of struggle to deal those heavy damage numbers. You usually have to go to tier 10 to get that huge damage potential, but the Kronstadt can quite effectively do it at tier 9. It's also a really good map control ship thanks to the radar. I'm not using the radar module, I could easily slot it though. Too much. I think it's just too much of the good stuff on the Kronstadt. Not enough of the downsides like the Stalingrad has, especially considering it's a tier 9. You gotta keep that in mind. This is one tier lower, and I had to remind myself when I made this review or this commentary, I had to remind myself to keep comparing it to the other tier 9 cruisers, because by habit you want to compare it to stuff like Moskva. Oh, and it has more health than the Moskva has. It has bigger caliber guns than the Henry and the Moskva has. Like, it's I think the ship is stupid. I think the ship is a bit too stupid. Damage score wise, mostly just AP damage. Maybe should have used a bit more HE just to show it off, but you can easily play pure AP in this thing and do very, very well because, well, you basically have battleship guns on this thing. Ultimately though, let me show you guys the armor and the citadel size and the build that I'm currently using. Right, module wise, I'm pretty much running an identical setup to my Stalingrad. The difference is we can slot defensive AA now, but of course we also have access to that super damage con that I mentioned, which means, well, you're almost impossible to burst down, especially with HE fires or whatever, and flooding isn't really as big of a deal. Radar, as expected, you can slot spotting plane and you can slot hydro, but this combination seems to be the most universally powerful. Reload mod, concealment, faster rudder shift, which you really need because the rudder shift is quite bad. Better dispersion because, well, your guns are kind of your bread and butter, and the AA really isn't much to brag about at all. Rudder survival, not sure if it's the best option, but usually cruisers tend to lose rudder, especially if you're kiting away. And turret survival. Captain perks wise, I'm running the Stalingrad Captain, which means priority target, turret traverse, superintendent for additional heal, vigilance to deal with torps, concealment, and fire prevention because, well, we have so much health. We're practically a small battleship, and of course, adrenaline rush. I can show you guys the premium. Oh, this is actually the premium camo. Never mind. I never bothered changing it. So this is the premium camo that we're running. And let me show you guys, of course, the armor that I mentioned. As you can see, the armor is the 25mm is pretty obvious. These are, of course, this is of course the weakness, but I mean, it's not like it's the only ship. Some have it significantly worse. For example, the Ibuki. I mean, it does have the deck armor, but then this is 25, this is 30, this is 32, this is all 25, this is all 25, this is all 25. Donskoy sits at 25, 25, 25. So it's not like it's some sort of unique thing that only the Kronstadt suffers from 25mm armor. No, many other cruisers do. But the thing is, if you look at the armor belt, 100mm, pretty low on the ship, doesn't extend that far. Ibuki, the thinnest strip of 100mm you could possibly imagine. Does it have anything else? Oh, it does have 140 here underneath. That's pretty much it. And then when we compare it to, let me turn that back on. And then when we compare it to the Kronstadt, yeah, that is a lot of armor. It's a big ship, sure, but it does have a lot of armor protecting its citadel. The citadel, of course, let me show that as well, since people will ask. The citadel, as I mentioned, barely peaks over the waterline. It's very large in size. It extends past both the turrets, but it's very close to the waterline. So mostly it's going to be those long-range plunging shells that are probably going to be the biggest issue. It does have 30mm on top though, so it won't get overmatched that easily. I reckon something like Yamato and Musashi can be a real issue for it though. But I mean, once again, compared to some other citadels, you see how much further higher up the Donskoy citadel extends. Buffalo, this is a work in progress as well, but I mean, it's pretty much across the board. Baltimore Citadel also extends further up. It's smaller once again in size, but it extends further above the waterline. I think even the Rune Citadel extends further up. It is protected by that special design, which makes it very hard to citadel at close range, but once again, having a hittable citadel isn't anything special at tier 9 for a cruiser. And basically, that's kind of my issue with the Kronstadt, is that the weaknesses that this ship has is something that a lot of its competition at tier 9 also shares. But then on the other hand, the competition doesn't share this absurd health pool, this great armor on the belt. Well, that's not really, I mean, it's a that's actually not that big of a deal, the big armor on the belt, because it does have the size to offset the fact that it has armor. But then we have the torpedo protection and the guns. So yeah, a bit too much. I could easily compare the ship with a tier 10, and I think the Kronstadt would do very well. Compared to tier 9 though, this thing is just a goddamn monster, and I do feel it's a bit too much. I don't think it quite needs this much health. I think they could easily like cut down the health to something like 55k, maybe 60k, something around those borders. It would be the tankiest tier 9 cruiser still, but it wouldn't literally have almost 50% more effective health than the second highest cruiser in the competition. So yeah, a bit too much of the good stuff on the Kronstadt right now, and if the idea is to stop power creep, then, well, we already have the Missouri and the Musashi that are both stupidly strong for tier 9. We don't exactly need a third stupidly strong premium tier 9. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.